like to thank the Black Caucus for having us here this morning. And I'd like to say that everything that the previous presidents have said is also true for UMES. I often say to my leadership group, there is nothing wrong with UMES that money cannot fix. I often quote Senator Conway, and she won't remember what she said once, it's about the money of it. And so, the reason I can be last and not repeat what everyone else has said is that UMES is unique. It is the land-grant university among the black universities in the state of Maryland. Land-grant means that we are charged to take care of the land, the sea, and the air, and how well we do. The problem, though, is that most of the money we spend doing this research is money that comes in from grants and contracts. My faculty, my researchers are very good at going out and bringing in large sums of money, $12.5 million from NOAA, for example. And then people read that we got this grant and they think that I have $12 million to give them. No, that money has to buy boats, it has to sail to Alaska, it has to do things that John Q. Public does not know about. But in addition to all the things we heard today, which are true as I said, I'd like to take a slightly different angle. What do we do about these problems? The research shows that the best indicator of student performance is the level of parental education. So we should educate the parents or encourage our young people not to become parents until they have some education and can provide an environment for young people to grow. For example, one of the reasons our students aren't doing well, they cannot read and write very well. That's basic. We need to pay attention to public libraries, fund them, and not just do that. Take the young people to the libraries and insist that at an early age, these basic skills are mastered. For example, if you can read and write nowadays, you can teach yourself whatever you need to learn because it's presented in that media, in those media, and so you could really help yourself. And so this point that I'm making really undergirds the theme for this morning about post-secondary education beginning at the beginning. What it is, we're fixing things here at the end, but we probably need to pay greater attention to those early beginnings, the environment in which children are raised, their exposure to culture, their exposure to civility, their exposure to good taste, their exposure to how we treat other people. All of that on my campus is a part of education. I have to hire people to teach etiquette, to teach young men how to tie ties, and to teach them how to sit at table. And so it goes beyond the classroom. I'd also rush along. I am repeating now, we do have honor students who come in who don't need us. They could go to any university in America and succeed and do well. And when I was here a year ago, I brought one of our graduates, Dr. Thomas Levist, who has an endowed chair at Johns Hopkins University and is a great professor there. He went through the remedial program at UNES and achieved that level, and there are others. I'd also like to mention that to get where we need to go, we have to coordinate the programs that support our young people. There are any number of mentoring programs in the communities, church programs, but they're not coordinated. So some people get left out and some people get everything. I'd also like to say internships, so where we offer these internships, but the students don't come. My students cannot afford to do an unpaid internship, even if it's at the White House in Smith. They can't afford to live in Washington, ride the subway every day, feed themselves to go to work for nothing, not for big companies and not for the government. They're just too poor. And so I'd like for us to look at this, because it's like offering, giving a party and nobody coming, and then blaming the guests. That's not fair. I'd like to point out that statistics sometimes can be very unkind to the historically black colleges. I tell you what, you will read in most newspapers that my graduation rate is declining. Yes, that is true, but I'm graduating more people than we ever did. How can that be? Because the key word is rate. And people like to judge black colleges from the negative perspectives. Let me explain. If we take in 100 students and we lose 40%, we have 60 students left. This is where we beat the game. We are recruiting many more. So I recruit 200 students and I lose 45% of 200. Yes, that is a higher number. But then I am left with 120 students, exactly twice. This is what has happened with my graduation at UNES. So though you will read that the rate is going down, physically, we have many more bodies to provide for. And our budget is never increased based upon intake or anything. So the money we get to help to develop curriculum and help is really, for example, my intake last year was 1,200 students. The money was enough for 187 students. In that population I deal with then, not only are my freshmen in